What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is part 18 of what I hope is a never ending series of reviews and rankings of the Grateful Dead's Dave's Picks. Started with one, reviewed it, ranked it. It was number one for at least a week. Then I'm doing each one about once a week and then incorporating into the list. So we're on 18. I will discuss 18, and then I will show you where I, in my opinion, think it falls amongst the other 17 that I've thus far reviewed. I think number 44 just came out. So in about 26 weeks from now, 28 weeks from now, 27 weeks from now, because they'll probably release one from then. I'll be caught up. And then we can, figure something else out from there. But anyways, this is number 18. This is a 4-disc set, 3 discs in the a release, plus there's a bonus disc. It is a complete show from July 17th, 1976. The bonus disc is all material from July 16th, the day before. And this entire show, the 17th, fits on 2 discs with 1 song, a second encore of Not Fade Away, which was an encore, a standalone encore, a 15-minute version of it, is the only thing from the 17th that's on disc 3. The rest of disc 3 is all material from the July 16th show, and then the bonus disc has more material from the July 16th show. Both of these shows were from an 7-night run. They did at the Orpheum in San Francisco in 1976. They did a bunch of shows in June, and almost the entirety of June. I think June 2nd or 3rd was the first show. They went towards the end of the month. They took a couple-week break, and then they had this 7-show run in San Francisco. And I do think that it almost sounds like this is maybe some early June shows. They do still sound like they're trying to find their way. They had taken a hiatus at the end of 74 through 75. They came back in June of 76. So they had not been playing very long. They were kind of still finding their way. Mickey had rejoined the group. And so as far as this show goes, it's kind of a sloppy show, and it's kind of a 60s, 76, kind of slow, kind of anemic. There's a number of songs which sound like they're barely being held together. It's just the band is you can hear the drummers and you can hear the bass and the rhythm, but it just sounds like it's almost like a rehearsal, or it's just they're all in the same room playing the song, but not even connecting with each other. And then we get vocals, and it has some rough moments, if you ask me. Some moments which just the energy's just not there. And it's not like they're playing the songs at a normal pace with a lack of energy. They're playing the songs at a slower pace in almost a skeletal form with a lack of energy. Which, as someone who's heard way too many Dead shows in my life, I kind of like at times. It's kind of interesting, but ultimately not something I want to go back to a lot. One of the really interesting things about 76 is the Dead started to have, while there was really deep playing in the band, dark star jams, even those post-Weather Report suite jams were kind of absent. A lot of songs, they started to have these just jams that sort of arose out of nowhere. At the end of The Eyes of World, they would just go off in a direction that they hadn't gone before and have sort of a different groove or a different rhythm. There were a number of these instances in this show where a song that would normally go in one direction just kind of takes off in a different direction out of nowhere, and you get these sort of standalone jams. And they're interesting from the viewpoint of having heard so much other Dead, appreciating them trying something new. But I can't say that once they get there, the payoff is all that huge. Though there is one moment that I really, really, I think is one of the better examples of a certain song that they play, which occurs, I think it's in the bonus disc, sadly. So I always feel weird about where to include the bonus disc when I rank these things, but I think the we'll get to the ranking later. But anyways, the first set, all of it, is on disc one. So it's a short first set. We even get the first song of set two on the first disc. So it's a really short set. And it's your typical Bob Jerry, Bob Jerry. Bob seems like Bob is playing all cover songs. Every single song is a covered song. We got two Chuck Berry songs, a Merle Haggard song, a Johnny Cash song, a traditional blues song. Bob songs are just your standard Bob delivering what Bob delivers. We got a Promised Land, Jerry song. Mama Tried, Jerry song. Minglewood, Jerry song. Big River, Jerry song. Johnny Be Good to close out. Bob's just doing Bob. Okay? Jerry, however, Jerry's songs are struggling. And the only thing that really redeems, and almost each of the four songs Jerry does, is redeemed by his guitar playing. It's not a ferocious guitar playing. It is a sweet Jerry. It is a very delicate, melodic, but with energy and with focus. Not like intense energy, but like sweet energy. And really, in almost each of these songs, it's like a struggle until you get to the guitar solo when everything seems to come together and like the latter half of the song seem to work. Mississippi Half Step, it's awkwardly painful. It is slow. It is so slow that it almost seems like they need momentum to keep the ship together, and it is so slow that it is lacking the sort of the force, the centrifugal. I hate that word. It lacks the force to keep everything, adhered to the core, and it just seems like it's going to fall apart for almost the entire length of it. It really isn't until that last closing solo when it seems to like kind of maybe come together, maybe get a little bit of sweetness in Jerry's performing, but it's a rough Mississippi Half Step, and I'm pretty sure Mississippi Half Step was in my top 10 Dead songs. It is one of my favorite live Dead songs. I enjoy this one because of how painful it is. But yeah, man, if you're trying to turn somebody on to the Dead, nah, stay away from this first set. Deal, really slow Deal. Just again, barely moving along, it seems like. Once the solo hits, we got some nice energy. It seems like everything seems to coalesce post-solo. But again, it's a short, just kind of run through the numbers type of deal. Peggy-O, really delicate. Barely seems to be holding itself together, but the solo is so sweet and so beautiful and works so perfectly. I mean, again, Jerry's guitar is coming to the rescue. And then we get the obvious highlight of the first set, I think, by far, a Sugary. We aren't yet to those truly majestic must-hear heights of like 77, but both the solos have really redeeming qualities about them. Jerry, what did I write? It's a very tender, sugary, maybe a little gentler, but there's still that majestic feel to sort of that closing solo. And so you can see that it's gonna you can see the development that it's already getting in its return, and you can see how, if you know where it's gonna go, how there's a logical progress to get to be a bigger, better, grander Sugary, but it's not quite there yet. But it is, without a doubt, the highlight of what is a kind of standard, if not at times rough, first set. Second set, first song is on the end of disc one. It's a Samson and Delilah. Kind of, again, sort of an anemic, trying to figure it out. I think there's a different lyric at one point. A little bit rougher than it would become. I think I like this early version of Samson better than the later ones. I think that when it gets its groove going and when it becomes more of what it would always be, it gets a little boring. And these kind of figuring it out early ones are just a little more interesting to my ears, which have heard way too many Samsons in my life. So that's the end of disc one. Disc two opens up with one of the most unique Comes a Times I think I've heard. The beginning of the Comes a Time reminds me of like I don't watch Star Trek, but I've seen enough Star Trek to know that like they have the transporters, is that what they're called? When they stand in that thing and they like get moleculized and then they reappear somewhere else. This is almost like, okay, we played Samson and comes a time, it's on its way, but we have to wait for it to like form. And it's almost as if like you can hear like, the drummers are doing something and the bass player's doing something and Bobby's doing something and they're all doing stuff, but it's not quite yet. It's not really tuning. It's not really a jam. It's almost like you can just see Comes a Time as just starting to like appear and form and like materialize. And it takes a couple minutes for it to do it, maybe a minute, minute and a half. And once it does that, you're like, oh, we're here. And it's just kind of again, a super chill Comes a Time. And it kind of works. I like it. I think this is a song that I'll take any version of Comes a Time. But it's just a really kind of delicate Comes a Time, but that beginning sort of formation is just kind of intriguing, and I kind of like it. And I wish it was purposeful, but it probably wasn't. They were probably just, trying to figure things out. But it has a very, I don't know, it's an interesting beginning to what eventually turns into like a 16-minute Comes a Time, because there's this really awesome, super chill, again, kind of doesn't really sound like anything else type, super chill jam at the end. Calling it a jam seems weird, but this really nice, just kind of floating kind of energy that takes us into a short little drums, like a less than 2 minutes. Then we get a pretty good other one that I'm not going to say it hits hard, but it definitely brings way more energy than we've seen so far in the show. Jerry is pretty focused, though again, not aggressive, just kind of focused. And then we get the first verse and we just go into a space. Man, we just go into like a free form space for like on the actual disc it says 10 minutes, but I think Billy comes back or Mickey comes back. The drummers come back about halfway through, but it still has a very amorphous sort of quality. And this might be the highlight of the show. This space, it is just, again, it's chill, it's sweet, it's delicate, it's pretty interesting. It just kind of falls, it just kind of happens. Things just kind of fall apart after the other one, and next thing you know, we're in space. But it kind of works. And then things start to sort of, they start to kind of get back together and coalesce and kind of unite their armies, their individual instrumental armies together. And then we head back into we go into an Eyes of the World. And the Eyes of the World it's an okay's Eyes of the World. But again, after the Eyes of the World, after we run through what is a pretty standard, not too good, but not too remarkable solos between the verses, we go into another really interesting jam that kind of sounds like nothing else they've ever done. I think this is the one that Keith has some really, really nice organ work in it. All of a sudden his organ is popping up and you hear some organ work. His presence is awesome. And it's just a really neat sort of texture and flavor that is, it's labeled as jam on the CD, when I think if on a tape, I probably would have just gone like Eyes of the World would have been 15 minutes into the other one. But it really is sort of a standalone type moment that kind of doesn't really feel like any other Eyes of the World type jam. That's pretty interesting. That goes back into the other one. We get the second verse. Then we go into a pretty typical going down the road feeling bad, into just an anemic One More Saturday Night. The beginning of this is just like, beep, 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 doo, 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 doo. I mean, just like almost doesn't work. And then we get the first encore, which is another kind of rough US blues, if you ask me. That's the end of disc 2. And then the first track on disc 3 is a Not Fade Away second encore, that a standalone Not Fade Away. And the Going Down the Road Feeling Bad is essentially a standalone Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. Even though there's an arrow on the CD that there indicates that it segues, it almost like the other one kind of completely falls apart, and then Going Down the Road kind of emerges out of the ashes out of that. And Going Down the Road essentially ends before One More Saturday Night goes. I think it's indexed as a segue, but it's not a true segue. It's like maybe a second between them, but it's almost like a self-contained Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, which is a pretty unique thing, and a self-contained Not Fade Away. And the Not Fade Away is good, but again, there is this really super chill jam in the middle of it that is just so low-key and so laid back, and almost feels like, again, it's just going to fall apart and dissolve in like the space, because there's just no drive to it. There's no like momentum keeping things together. But again, it's kind of interesting. So that's the show. And like, I'm hesitant to recommend it to anybody who's not already familiar with the Dead or wants to try to get into the Dead, because there's a remarkable lack of energy. The second set is pretty interesting. The Comes a Time is kind of like no other. nice and long, but again, super chill. The other one, Space, Eyes of the World, with that jam at the end, back into the other one, is a pretty awesome, what is that? 15, 35 minutes of music that's pretty interesting. It's obviously, I think, the highlight of the show, but I think it's a relative highlight. I wouldn't call it an absolute highlight of like any of those songs or maybe even any 76 shows. But that's the meat of it, is that second set. Though the first set's pretty painful, to be honest, to my ears. So then we get the bonus material on disc 3, which is a bunch of 7 tracks from July 16th, 1976. A pretty good Big River. Yeah, hate to say that, but again, got a Big River, got a Brown Eyed Women, we got a Looks Like Rain, we got a Peggy-O, we got a Music Never Stopped. That is some pretty good energy. That the post lyric jam is pretty good, and that energy goes into Scarlet Begonias. And I think we have this Scarlet, this 76 Scarlet, is now not sounding. I think those 74 Scarlets have a very particular sound, and those jams have a very particular flavor. And the Scarlet that we're now getting, taking the energy from that Music Never Stops, feels like those monster Scarlets that we're going to get in 77, 78, and pretty much for the rest of the Dead. That just a little more second set worthy type Scarlet, a bigger Scarlet, a jam that's a lot more of a different type of happy, upbeat Caribbean energy instead of a little more lower back burner intense Caribbean energy. So I think the Scarlet 100% is the highlight of this material on disc 3. Really good Scarlet. Jerry's pretty aggressive in it and playing pretty well. But yeah, that is 100%. I think the best part of this is the Scarlet Begonia. And you can really tell like the combination of music and the Scarlet. That is something I maybe wish had stuck around, instead of Scarlet having to feed fire, to have music feed Scarlet, so Scarlet gets that extra boost of energy. But it's a really good Scarlet. And then we get another US Blues, which, whatever. But yeah, on that disc 3, the opening Not Fade Away is a pretty interesting Not Fade Away. Kind of doesn't compare to the monstrous ones of the following year, or even ones of earlier. And the Music Never Stops Scarlet Begonias pairing, I think, is a pretty special little pairing, and definitely gives you hope for what the Dead are going to do, at the end of 76 and through 77. And then in the bonus disc is really good. Bonus disc has some really good stuff on it. It's a great, fantastic set list, 8 songs, opens up with a playing in the band. And my tape that I have of this, there was a not too good sounding tape of almost all of this 7 run of shows. It says playing in the band into Stronger Than Dirt. It is not Stronger Than Dirt. I think this is the first time I've heard it in this good of sound quality. I'm pretty sure my tape is pretty bad sound quality. It's not Stronger Than Dirt. There are definite a Stronger Than Dirt flavor. Definitely towards the end of it, some of Phil's sort of runs maybe feel like they could jump into Stronger Than Dirt, or maybe go in that direction, but they don't. So I think that's a mislabeling, or it's just someone with a bad sound quality was like, oh, that's Stronger Than Dirt, which, I'll give them that. But yeah, and so that's what we get for like the most of the playing in the band jam. And it's a pretty unique flavor, and it's just a different sort of one of those examples of them doing something they kind of hadn't done before and going somewhere different that wasn't the same as their like deep space explorations that they would do before. I got a weird message again. So you get an interesting, so it's like 15 minutes, and maybe like the last 8 or 9 minutes are the Stronger Than Dirt. Maybe not that long. But that first part, when the Dead are just jumping into the playing in the band thing, it really is like just directionalist noodling. Like, I'm into it, but it's chill. It doesn't seem like they really have a place to go. And the fact that once they find this direction and ride that for a super long time shows that they're sort of in a different mentality, I think, now, where before I think they would ride it for shorter periods and do more exploration. So you can kind of see sort of a shift in intention in this playing in the band that kind of encompasses a lot of 76 shows. That goes into a Cosmic Charlie, which is just things get really, really quiet and almost fall apart. We get a Cosmic Charlie. I'm not a fan of the Cosmic Charlies from that when they made the return. They're just slow and awkward. The band stopped playing them after a handful of them. They didn't know what to do with them. I don't think it ever works. I'm not even sure I like to hear it. I'm always excited to hear the beginning of it, thinking, oh yeah, this could be the one. It never is the one. I personally am not a big Cosmic Charlie fan. After the Cosmic Charlie, there's a Spanish Jam. The Spanish Jam, I think, is maybe the highlight of this entire 4 disc set. 9 minutes, and maybe the first 4 to 5 minutes is the quietest space you've ever heard. Like every time I play this, I'm almost like, wait, did the CD stop playing? And I literally have to go check to make sure it's still running because it is just like it is so chill, it's not even there. But once they hit the Spanish Jam, it is, I think, one of the most vibrant Spanish jams. Like they engage with it hard, and the interplay with Bob and Jerry, I think in particular, it just seems like there's this weaving sort of thread where they're each taking different motifs from the jam and kind of intertwining and racing around each other. And I think it is just one of the most like magical, inspiring, exciting, like absolute favorite. Like it kind of sucks that it's after this pretty good playing in the band, but this completely anemic waste of time. Cosmic Charlie, sorry, Cosmic Charlie fans, but man, it is good. Like, I really think if you can find this and you can find the bonus discs, I know the bonus discs are a lot harder to find than the regular discs, but if that tape is in circulation, you can find a copy of that tape. Listen to this Spanish Jam. I enjoy this Spanish Jam a lot. That goes into like a 4-minute drums. Then we get a wheel, one of those really awesome 76 wheels with some really good rhythm section work. The post vocal part is a really nice jam that eventually works its way back into a playing in the band. We get a nice jam there. We get a playing in the band reprise. And so we get a really nice sort of Spanish jam, drums, wheel, playing in the band. Then we get, and I don't think this is in order at this time. No, after the playing in the band, they do an around and around. That's not on this in the real show. But then we get the last 2 songs of the main set. We get a high time, a late second set high time, which is on this bonus disc, the penultimate track. But again, I'll take all the high times. Not one of the best. We still got some major 76 energy working through here, but it's a high time. And if Jerry sounds anemic, or kind of sick or kind of weary, or the song just kind of falls apart, it works for high time. And I'm there for it every time. And then we get a Sugar Magnolia encore. But yeah, man, so that's it. It's a rough listen. I've talked a long time for a show that I think is a rough listen, but it's a compelling listen. And if you are one of those people that's heavily, heavily into the Dead and you have this experience and you know what to compare them to, I would check this show out. First set, much less essential than the second set, but the second set has some really unique moments and have them kind of exploring avenues they don't normally explore. And the bonus disc, I think, is maybe the best part, but I'm not gonna let the bonus disc weigh too heavily on it because maybe the Cosmic Charlie cancels out some of the other stuff. But again, it's a pretty good bonus disc. But where would I end up putting it? I would end up putting it right there, towards the back. I might have it at 14. Better than those 78 shows, which I just think are kind of that 78 malaise for a lot of it, but they have a couple highlights. But the thing with this is like, the first disc is almost like, I don't ever listen to the first disc. The song on theirs I like. I think there are better versions of every song on other shows. The second disc is pretty strong with That Comes a Time. The third disc is, it's really just that music never stopped that I think is really the important thing. And the bonus disc is good. So all those things considered, 14 might even be too high of a ranking. It might be even need to be further back. There might be complete recency bias in this. But I do really like That Comes a Time a lot. And I do like that Spanish Jam a lot. So I'm going to put it at 14. I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to settle for that. So anyways, that's that. It's a really long video for a show I'm not that hot about, but it was fun to talk about. I like talking about it. I think 76 shows are by far the most fascinating shows the Dead have played because it's this, you have a little bit of ideas hung over from 73 and 74. You can see where they're going in 77. So many songs have come back, but they're slowed down so much. And the Dead has this weird, powerful, but sluggish intensity. a fascinating year. Not one of the better shows from this fascinating year, but a fascinating show nonetheless. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. Thanks for watching. Comment, subscribe, like, share, all that kind of stuff. Let me know why I messed up, what I messed up about. I'm sure I did. It's a long day. But please, more than anything, go find this show somewhere out there. Listen to it. Let me know what you think. Listen to music, people. Music is the best, as a man once said. Peace. Talk to you later.